Hello everybody, I'm Oliver Villar, and in this video I'm going to show you Luke's room from Luke's Escape. Here we're going to talk first about the 3D scene. I'm going to show you how we built it, how it's made, the parts that it has, the render layers, and talk about different curiosities and techniques that we used to build it. And then we will analyze some of the renders that we took during the process so you can see the evolution of the scene and understand how we reached the final result. So I hope you like it. Let's dive into it. Alright, so here's the scene, and as you can see, so far it looks all normal. There is a bunch of models and a few lights, and everything looks normal. Now, I'm going to get into the details and show you how the scene is built and what is it made of, because these are not objects really. I mean, they are objects, but they are not models that I can access. I cannot get into edit mode and tweak this toy, for example. I'm pressing tab, it doesn't happen. If I go here, you can see that it's I don't have the option to go into edit mode. The reason is that here we're using groups. You see, each one of these objects are actually in their own blend file. The reason for this is that we are a team from all over the world working on this scene. So we decided that each of us would be working on a specific prop and just save them separately, because otherwise there would be problems with the syncing, right? Because if both of us, if a few of us are working at the same time in the same blend file, there would be conflicts, and we're using Dropbox to synchronize everything, so we need to be working separately. So each of these props was made in a separate blend file, and then all of them are linked into this file. So the reason why we're using groups instead of objects is that groups allow us to link several objects in a single group. For example, let me check for an object, and here this is a little trip, a little trip, not a trip, a trick. Okay, Control Alt B to remove the render border and press N, and this is the backface cooling option, which basically hides the back side of the models. So you can see that, for example, the back side of the walls disappear, and we can rotate around the room easily and very quickly without the walls in the way, which is pretty good for analyzing the scene and watching it. But you can see that also some objects that for some reason have their normals inverted. That is not really a problem, okay, because in the render the normals doesn't matter. They are both sides, so it's not a problem. But for some reasons, when we created these props, for example, the screen of this monitor is just inverted, and well, you can see that it disappears in this mode. So I prefer to have it turned off. But in this case, we have the walls, it's easier to navigate. Okay, so imagine, for example, this alarm clock. Okay, this alarm clock is actually several objects. There are several objects. It's not a single model. And if we wanted to bring the objects here, we would have to append all the objects from the original file and then move them together. And this could very quickly get messy. So the reason why we decided to use groups is that in the original scene we can just take a bunch of objects, group them together, and then here is just a single group. You can see here, for example, that if we go to the outliner and jump to the groups selection, you can see here that each object is a group. So we have the alarm clock, for example, and once we select it, we can just move the whole alarm clock. There's another reason why we use groups, and is that we discovered, and it was not cool, that when we link an object from another file, we cannot access to its modifiers. As well as we cannot go into edit mode, we cannot access the modifiers and, for example, change the amount of subdivisions that this object is displaying, both in the viewport and in the render time. This is not ideal because, for example, in a big scene like this with a lot of objects in which we are going to have a character and animation, and it's a lot to render, so we want to have the possibility to tweak the amount of subdivisions of different objects. So if the camera is close to an object, we can make that object more dense, while if the object is far away or it will be blurred in the background, we can just decrease its subdivisions and have a low poly version of it being displayed, so it renders faster. This was something that we discovered, that when you link an object, you don't have access to these controls. You cannot control subdivisions. This was a problem, and after making a lot of tests, we discovered a way that could work, and this is using groups. Using groups, you can see that using the same example as the alarm clock, we can go here to the Object tab, and you can see that here inside duplication we have a group and an alarm clock. This is basically because when we link a group in here, we are basically creating something like an empty that is displaying that group of objects in its place. So the group essentially just stores the location, rotation, and scale of this object, but you cannot access the contents, right? So here you can see that we have the alarm clock. Now the alarm clock, let me check. All right, the alarm clock is one object that we don't have this feature on for, so I'm sorry for that. But we can select, I think, this one. I'm sure this one has it. So you can see that this is kind of low poly. All right, even though this is not exactly the render resolution. In the render resolution, this renders, I think, at 1 subdivision and easy enough for most cases. But if we wanted to get closer with the camera, we would probably need to increase these subdivisions. Now, in the original file, we created different versions of this object. So we have a low poly version and a high poly version. You can see that here under group, it tells us which group this object is displaying. But we can come in and remove the L of low. And you can see that automatically we get here the 2 available versions of this group. And the high version, you can see that automatically displays a better resolution. This is great, and it has, its con is that, well, it's more difficult to set up, and it gives you more work to set it up and link 2 files instead of 1 and having to replace it instead of just going to the subdivisions and change them. All right, so it's a little more work than adding a subdivision modifier. On the other hand, it's great because it does not only allow you to change the subdivisions, but you can actually store in each of the groups, in the low poly and high poly groups, you can actually store totally different models. So you can even decimate it if you want, you can actually change the shape, or even in the very low resolution one, you can just store a plane with a texture of this object if you want it to be seen from very far away. So this is something that you can do, and also, not only that, you can also replace the textures. So for example, for the low resolution versions, you can use very low resolution textures, which is great, something that you cannot just do with subdivisions. So we discovered that we had a problem, but we discovered a solution that is actually better than the original idea. However, being able to use subdivisions would have been great. This I throw this to the Blender developers, giving access to the modifiers and some options that are in a link object would be great, because otherwise the only way to change them would be to go to the original file and change there the subdivisions amount, and this is not really a good idea, because when you change it there and save the file, it will extrapolate to all the files using this link. And in this case, for example, this is the room. But this room is used in every shot, and every shot is a single Blender file. So if we go and change the subdivisions of one of the objects in the original file, it will affect all of the files. And in each shot, we want to have the ability to change the subdivisions depending on the camera position. Okay, so we want to do this individually per shot. Okay, so this is one of the things that I find interesting. Now I'm going to show you the different render layers that we have here, because this is kind of interesting too. So we have, as you can see, we have the room, which is great. We have the background. There is a plane outside with an image texture that displays what you see through the window. And then we have the window volumetrics and the lamp volumetrics. I'm going to show those now. First, I want to comment that, for example, this window, the glasses of the window are actually objects that only the camera sees. We made them so they are not projecting shadows or anything like that. So only the camera can see them. For the shadows, they don't exist. We want the light to pass through them very easily. If we just have a transparent objects, it means that when going through the glass, the light is already spending one of the bounces that we set up for the scene. We don't want this light to have to perform bounces here in the glass and maybe lose intensity or anything when it comes into the room. So because of that, we use the light path node, and we are only using these windows so the camera can see them with the reflection, but for the light, they are totally transparent, they don't exist. So that is one of the things to keep in mind. Also, we have, let me check on the volumetrics. I'm going to search here. I think I want to have, I need to go here to the current scene and search for fog, because these two objects, okay, is nice, the search feature here in the outliner, especially when you name the objects correctly. Otherwise it's a mess. Okay, so here we have the lamp fog and the window fog. So these objects that are hidden in the viewport, but they are rendered, you will see that are these objects. So basically, instead of having volumetrics all over the room and having to render volumetrics for the whole room, I'm just using volumetrics for those parts in which I actually want the volumetrics to happen. So one of them is in this light, this lamp from the desktop, and the other one is the light that comes to the window. You can see that here the way I did it was actually taking the areas of the glasses that are visible and extruding them until they intersect with the floor. Okay, so basically we will have volumetrics only in these areas, and also these I aligned them with the light that is outside. So first I lit the scene, all right, with a sun lamp from outside, and then I lined up this extrusion to the light that is generated in the floor to make sure that the volumetrics fit with the actual lighting of the room. Okay, this saves us a lot of render time because we are only rendering volumetrics where we need them. And volumetrics, remember, they are very slow to render, so we have to be very careful with this. All right, so let's see more things. Let's go to the layers. So if we go here to the layers, okay, this is something that I highly recommend. This is the Layer Manager add-on, which comes bundled into Blender. You just need to enable it. And it's great because it gives you access to these same layers that you have here. But not only that, let me just take this away. Not only that, you can name them, which is great because up to this point, imagine that you have a complex setup like this, and we have different layers. We have the render layers set up and everything. So it's important that we know what exactly is in each of the layers. And here, being able to name them is great. What I used to do before having this add-on available was that I would save a text file. Okay, remember that Blender has a text editor useful for programming, but I usually use it. Where are you? Where are you, text editor? Here it is. All right, text editor. You can create a new file and then just write here blah 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 blah. And this text editor is basically for programming. Okay, you can run scripts from here, but I used to use it as instructions. Okay, so in files, I would take notes here and I would say like layers and go here to 01 character, 02 rig, 03 lights, and blah blah blah. And this is useful because when you write to the scene, you know what each layer is. Also, I would add some instructions on maybe how to use the character. This, we have done it for Lux Escape. All right, so the animators, when they pick the file with the rig, they can have some instructions on how the rig works. Okay, so we use this for instructions. It's interesting to have something like a text editor inside Blender but instead of using it for programming, which is its main purpose, we use it for storing information about the scene that can be valuable. You may think that you don't need it. And believe me, I've made that mistake myself. Imagine that you work on this scene and then for some reason you are working on another project and you have to come back to this scene 3 months from now. Believe me, you won't remember most of the stuff you did. So it's important to have like names on the layers or some way of knowing what you did and where each thing is, because otherwise you'll have problems. Okay, some more things to mention before we leave and start commenting on the renders is these second lights. So the second lights, you can see this, it is a layer with a bunch of lights that are meant to improve the lighting of the scene. You will see later in the renders that the basic light that you have, imagine this scene is an interior scene and light is coming from outside. This makes it difficult for cycles to render this scene, all right? Interior scenes are usually a lot more difficult than the exterior scenes because the light is usually when you are in a room in your house during the day with daylight, most of the light that is inside the room is not direct light, it's actually bounced light. And when we have bounces, the more bounces that we need to light the scene, it works very well in the reality because we have millions of bounces of the photons inside the room, but in a 3D scene we have limits because we could render that, of course, with I don't know, 1000 bounces, but this would take forever to render, and we don't want that. So we want to limit the amount of bounces, and these lights basically help Blender understand what we want. All right, these are tricks, but are tricks to kind of mimic reality. All right, so the light that comes from outside just draws the light that is direct, all right, and then the bounces, we fade them with lights that in this case are area lamps. I usually use also spotlights, okay, and in fact some of these will probably be replaced by spotlights at some point, but well, here you can see, for example, that this Saturn globe, actually the material that it has, it doesn't really emit light. It only the camera sees it, all right? We use the light path for this. And if you have doubts about everything that I'm showing here, remember that inside Luxscape High School, I will be creating tutorials for this. So, whoa, wait a moment, my mouse is losing battery. Okay, sorry for that. All right, so this globe is only displaying an emission shader for the camera. For the rest of the scene, it's just a diffuse one. All right, and I want that because I don't want a ball here to be emitting light and control how the scene looks, because I want instead to have more control and add a few lights. So you can see, for example, that these lights are lighting up, left, front, and bottom, but not to the right, not to the back, because I don't need it, all right? This is empty space. So basically with this, I really can tell Blender how I want the scene to be lit up. These are tricks that, you know, in this scene, you're seeing just a few lights, and you can see that there are a couple of lights here. Okay, so for example, this one is affecting the lighting of the table, but this one is here to actually also light the volumetrics of the lamp. You can see that this screen actually doesn't emit light either. It just throws, you know, we have this area lamp that lights the scene with the screen of the computer, and you can see these small ones here that fake the bounce of the light on the floor, things like that. So if you go to a picture scene, I saw some information that you can literally find hundreds of lights in each scene, because representing all these bounces of light automatically sometimes may not work properly, or it may just take forever to render, or basically it won't look good. It may be realistically accurate, but it won't look good. And remember that here in this kind of scenes, we better than realistic, we want them to look good and beautiful. All right, so we are going to fake a lot with lights. If you go to a cinema studio, for example, even if it's a live action film, you will see that there are a bunch of lights that they put to fake the look of the scene and to make it look like if it was, I don't know, the sunrise or something like that. And it's actually a bunch of lights acting in different ways to make the scene look good, but it still make you recognize that this is a sunrise. And this is why usually when you try to film a short film with your phone in your house, it doesn't look professional, because you don't have a bunch of lights to make the scene more beautiful. All right, so this said, I think we covered everything. I'm just going to mention a couple of things. One of them, in case some of you ask, because, well, I mentioned that the subdivisions are not available for groups. But if you go to the Scene tab, you will be able to access the Simplify options, okay? So if you click on Simplify, you can control the maximum amount of subdivisions that you have in the scene. So you can see that if I simplify this, all of those change, which is great for performance in the viewport. This I used it as well, but this is not enough for what we needed. Okay, we need to be able to change this in an object basis, not in a scene basis. Okay, this affects the whole scene. We want to be able to tweak this for each one of the objects. So for example, let's try with this ball, and you can see that here we have the H unique. This I named it like that because because we want it to be unique always, because this model actually is kind of, it's okay for what it is, because it's going to be in the background, not close-ups. But if we don't subdivide it, it doesn't look good. All right, so we didn't make a low resolution version. All right. But the backup, for example, I'm pretty sure it has different versions. You can see that even we have 3 versions. So this is the low poly, all right? We had the medium poly before, and this is the high poly. And also, this is not what will be seen in the render. This is just meant to be seen in the viewport. When it renders, it's actually even more defined, all right? I think in the render we have set up 1 subdivision more than what we see here in the viewport. So here in the viewport, we just increased it a bit, so it's clear that which version of the object we are using. But yeah, all right. So come back to M, and yeah, so you can see how the scene works. And remember, I'll be making tutorials on each part that I mentioned. And if you want to see a tutorial specifically about some of these things that I'm mentioning, just leave me an email if you're a LuxEscape High School subscriber, and I will make sure that I create a video answering your questions, or if it's something simple, just answer your email. All right, so now we have seen this 3D scene. I'm going to jump into the images and analyze those renders. So you can see a big difference. This is not cool at all. This was the first scene that we rendered. And well, here basically I just grabbed some of the objects that we created and linked them together in a scene. And I think this is when we figured out that the subdivisions were not going to be enough because we couldn't control them. So before the next version, I actually replaced the whole scene with the new versions of the objects. We will be coming back to this scene though, because there are a couple of things that I want to mention. For example, here this lamp and this other lamp, you can see that they have quite tricky materials, because they should be translucent, right? But we are not making translucency here because it's more difficult to render, and it generates more noise. So we decided we won't use translucency for this. Instead, we use a normal material, and then on top of it, we add a layer of emission where we think that the light would lead this object more. So for example, here you can see there is a gradient here in this area, right? Also here, but not that much in the corners because the corners are probably thicker, okay? And same happens here, right? With a gradient, we controlled the area where the light bulb would make this object be brighter, all right? So it gives the impression that it's translucency, but it's not, okay? And it renders way faster. Okay, that's one of the things. These objects also, all of them changed, and you will see now the big change until the next render. So there you have it. You can compare both scenes. All right, not only the camera changed, okay, we changed the camera because in this one we just placed the camera and launched a quick render to see more or less how everything was looking like, but this is not ideal, okay? Here we changed a lot of things. We changed the position of some objects. You can see that I started experimenting with the volumetrics of the window. These were already made with the models that I showed you. The lamp volumetrics though weren't still being worked on, okay? This came later. You can see that some compositing has also been in, okay? In fact, these volumetrics are made with compositing, and there are some glow effects. You can see a lot of noise here in this ring, and I will come back to that in a moment, because it was an interesting thing, the solution for this, and it may happen to you at some point. Alright, so you can see how the scene looks a bit greenish, and you can see how a lot of the objects have had been as I call it, dirty-tized. Right, so we added a layer of dirt to everything in the scene, basically, which is a node setup that inside LuxEscape High School you can find a tutorial on how to create that node, which is a node that basically you add at the end of your material and it generates dust automatically. You just have some parameters to tweak the amount of dust and its color and its size and the patches and the contrast, things like that. But it basically generates dust on top of any object, even if you don't have UVs. So that's pretty cool. And we basically added that node to every object in the room to make everything look a bit old, okay? All right, so these were some changes, but here you can see that until the next version, a lot of things changed. Basically, you can see that everything became a lot bluer. Bluer? Is that even a word? Right, so this scene looks a lot more bluish, and we wanted it to look bluish. In the concept, it was bluish. In this first version, we were still experimenting with the objects, the shading, and the lighting, and all this stuff. But in this one is what I introduced color correction, okay, and we made the scene look a lot more like in the concepts. Basically, the idea is that we want the whole film is kind of dark and cold, so we wanted it to look quite blue, but at the same time, this is the kids' room, so we wanted it to look a bit warmer than the rest of the short film. That's why we mixed in some warmer colors, like light coming from the door, or these lights that are here are kind of warmer, right? But in general, the scene is quite bluish. All right, we change the position of some objects and things like that. We still have this noise here, right? And don't worry, I'll come back to that in a moment. Next version, you can see that a lot changed. Also, in between this version and this version, you can see that I added some dirt to the wall and some humidity things, and they were reduced later because I thought this was too much. But well, here we just did a, we added this effect very quickly and see how it looked like, and then we tweaked the intensity, which is not a problem. But you can see that there are, if you look at this area here, especially, you can see how there is a big difference, right? Well, for once, we changed this part of the room. We added the curtains. You can see that we also have some posters here, and hey, these are homages to Blender actually. We have the open movie posters here in the wall, and we also have the screen here with Blender 2.72, which is when this screen was modeled. So there are some homages. Because look, he's a poor guy, he doesn't have internet, so he's sticking with an old version of Blender. Ah, poor guy. All right, so here what happened is when I added these secondary lights that are faking the bounce of light in this window part, and also defining a bit better the rim of this drawer, so we can see the silhouette a lot better, and it gives a lot of depth to the scene, okay? As I mentioned, we will most probably change this to spot lamps, okay, because these also affect the floor and things like that. So usually spot lamps are better for this, but also area lamps work pretty well. Okay, here this globe, you can see that noise disappeared. So now I will talk about that. What happened with this globe? Well, let's go back to the beginning. I told you we were going to come back to this scene. All right, so here, basically the original object was a globe, and this globe was just emitting light. It had an emission material. We wanted to make it faster to render though. So basically what I did here is that I added the emission shader only for the camera with some kind of Fresnel to give it some look like translucency or something like that. And but the lighting is not affecting the scene. The emission of this shader is not affecting the scene. There is a lamp inside that generates some light around this the inner part of this ring, and then the lighting in the scene, we control it with area lamps. All right, so we have more control over that lighting. What happened is that the lamp was exactly in the center of this Saturn planet, and what happened is that the rays casted by this light are parallel to the surface of this ring, so not enough rays arrive there on render time. So we are left with a very, very noisy looking thing. Basically, this part should be shaded, but we have no shadows because there's not enough information from that light. So we have a problem there. It took me a while to figure out what was going on. I first thought that this object maybe had a translucent material or something like that, but it didn't. Then I thought that maybe the normals, maybe I don't know. I made a lot of tests, nothing happened. And finally, I realized that, hey, there is a lamp that is just aligned to this. So I just moved the lamp a bit up, all right? So this surface here received more rays, and suddenly, bum, we have shadows. And we have this area here inside the ring lit, all right? So that's great. You can see how a very small change affects the whole scene. So, and reduces the noise exponentially. All right, here also you can see that I started playing with the volumetrics of the lamp. Along these scenes, you can see how I also was changing how these volumetrics were affecting the scene. I did a lot of tests to make sure that these volumetrics will actually interact with the character, because the character will be here next to the window, will move here, and will sit on the bed. So we need these volumetrics to interact with Luke. So I did a lot of tests for that. So yeah, also we have the compositing, because you know these volumetrics are affecting this, but are actually coming here, and they should be behind the screen and behind the chair. And with compositing, when you put this layer of volumetrics on top, it may not happen. So you have to make sure that the rest of the scene is actually in mask mode in the render layer, so it masks that volumetric effect. We also added the curtains. You can see the curtains have a little translucency effect here that lets the light from the window pass. And the way I did that is that if you saw in the 3D scene, there was an area lamp here that is meant to light these borders of the curtain. So the curtain is more defined in its borders, and also light a bit around the window and behind it, so the translucency effect shows up with more intensity. All right, more things, all these areas, this area lights bouncing. We added some more objects around, and you can see that here, well, the resolution increased. There's no other change, I just increased the resolution. Also, you could see this thing here. It's a little curiosity, because this thing that I added here, I added because it looked quite empty. So I added this little thing here, which is basically a screenshot of the spreadsheet we used for tracking the progress of the props of this scene. So I thought it was a good joke between the team. And you can see that it's all of it is green, because at this point, all of the props were basically finished. Only this one had a little thing to do there, and I don't know what it was. But well, I was still working on it. But basically, yeah, I added that little paper there, and I thought it was worth mentioning. Alright, so here we increased the resolution just to check more accurately. I also increased, you can see the samples for the volumetrics. They are in their own render layers, and we can control the specific amount of samples for each individual render layer. So these render layers for the volumetrics have more samples than the general scene. If you leave the volumetrics in the actual scene, you will have to increase the whole scene sampling to make the volumetrics clean up all of their noise. And this is not ideal, because, you know, the scene without the volumetrics probably cleans the noise a lot faster than the volumetrics do. And you will have to be sampling the scene a lot of times to just feed the volumetrics. So it's a good idea to render them separately. All right, here more post-production, color correction, glow effects to make the scene, even if there is no fog in the scene. I faked it by using the mist pass. All right, so we have some depth in the scene, and also adding some glow to the lights, because when you have fog in a room or outside, you have you know, the light actually affect these particles of water that are in the air. Okay, so the thick air or the dust or whatever it is just has this kind of glowy effect, and so we added that. So we fake the effect that you know, the volumetrics are not only through the window, but it's actually the ambient of the whole room. So it was important. And here is the last version. All right, you can see the changes here. So some objects changed and some other things changed. But basically here you can see that, for example, these books here, I made them a lot darker. You can see that here I thought they were calling too much attention, and I didn't want that to happen, so I just darkened a bit their textures. We put another toy here, and basically we reduced the effect of the fog, and we darkened this area in the back to give more depth to the scene. All right, here it was a bit flatter, not too bad, but it was a lot lighter than we would like, because remember, we want this to be quite dark and cold, so you know, this was too light. All right, there was too much light. Also, we had this lamp here, and I didn't quite like it because it was a lamp in the corner. The brighter spot of light is in a corner where the attention of the viewer shouldn't be going, all right? So I decided just to remove it and to compensate, because here this lighting here on top of this drawer actually generates a bit of depth to the scene, because it gives some lighting to these things that are in the foreground. So it was when we retired this lamp here, we were missing that effect. So I decided to just move Saturn over here, so we have some lighting here on top of the drawer, but at the same time darken a bit this area, and this area here even darker. All right, so we still have some fog going on, some mist effect, but it's now very, very slight, subtle. You can see also that we reduced the amount of you know, dirt and humidity in the walls. All right, and I think that this is not totally finished, but almost there. We just want to add some probably dust particles in the air, still making tests to see what's the best way and more efficient way to do it. Maybe not particles. We're probably going to use some kind of animated textures or moving planes, something on along those lines. We are going to try. All right, we're going to try what is the most efficient and that renders faster way, and also that doesn't consume a lot of resources. The more that a problem that we have with this is that you know, when you have particles and you send the file to a render farm, for example, or to render in another computer and things like that, it is possible that the cache gets lost. Okay, so we need to put inside the scene in a controlled way as much as possible, all right? And we have now just cloth simulation, hair simulation, and a lot of things going on, and the less we have that can break, the better, all right? So if we can avoid particles, we will. Well, we will try how those planes work and see what happens. And well, this is everything. I hope you liked it. So this is it for this video. I hope you liked it and learned a few things. Remember that this is a part of LuxEscape High School, in which I will be publishing tutorials on specific things about this scene, like how we did the volumetrics, the group linking, all this sort of thing. I will be creating video tutorials there. You can even, if you're a part of LuxEscape High School, you can even shoot me an email if you really want to see how we did something, and I will create a tutorial on it. So the idea here in LuxEscape High School is that you benefit from what we learned researching for making this project happen. All right, it's difficult stuff. We find a lot of problems, as you saw in this video, and with the solutions, we share them with the subscribers. So I invite you to join if you're not a part of it already, and that I hope that you like it and you learn a lot from it. And if you're there already, thank you for supporting us, and see you in the next videos.